Hello Raindrops and welcome to Government Minute. Minutes that matter. This is Mr. A welcoming you to the Labor Day broadcast of Government Minute. Happy Labor Day everyone. I hope you had a 3-day weekend or have a 3-day weekend and enjoying your Labor Day. If you have to work, I hope you're getting time and a half. I am actually working right now. This was filmed before Labor Day. I'm actually working right now because I'm a teacher and I need a second job. Now, if there were only some way that I didn't have to do the second job. Have I mentioned you can subscribe to this channel? Just click that red button below and you can subscribe and see when all our videos come out and when you press that bell as well. As always, this video is dedicated to the glory of God who blessed this land. Today we're going to talk about number 2. No, not the bathroom. We're going to talk about the Vice President. The Vice President of the United States. Not the current one particularly, but just the Vice Presidency in general. The Vice President is literally a heartbeat away from the presidency. The moment that heart stops on that president, that person is now in charge. Quite often, the vice presidents were picked to balance the ticket. If you had someone from the East Coast, they picked someone from the West. Someone from the North picked someone from the South. You had a couple of times where a male picked a female. First time was in 1984 when of the major parties, when Walter Mondale picked Geraldine Ferraro from New York as his vice presidential running mate. It resulted in a 49-1 state landslide for Ronald Reagan. But it wasn't Geraldine Ferraro's fault. I don't think God could have beaten Ronald Reagan that year. That's a joke, people. It's just a joke, okay? All right, so anyway, the vice presidency, again, is literally a heartbeat away from the presidency. And the vice president, as important as a job as it would seem to be, doesn't get much love in the Constitution, doesn't get much respect in the Constitution. The vice president is only given 2 tasks. Number 1, to preside over the Senate. They are the president of the Senate. So when you watch C-SPAN, and they're showing the U.S. Senate in session, the senator rises and says, Mr. President or Madam President, whichever the case may be. They're not talking to the President of the United States. They're talking to the Vice President, who is the President of the Senate. The President of the Senate presides over the Senate. Most of the time, the Vice President does not. Most of the time, that is sloughed off to someone of the majority party to run things. The only time the Vice President is really interested in leading the Senate is when there's the possibility of a tie vote on something. The Vice President only votes in the Senate if there is a tie. There will always be an even number of senators. Each state gets 2, so no matter how many states you have, they get 2. And so right now we have 100, so it could be a 50-50 tie. In that case, the Vice President does cast the deciding vote. So, and the only other duty they are given in the Constitution is to help decide presidential disability. They are the ones who have to sign off with the majority of the cabinet to say the president is incapacitated. And that's it. Everything else has been kind of left up to how presidents wanted to use the vice president. Most vice presidents were, again, picked to help win an election and then sent off to a corner somewhere to be left alone unless they had to take over. The story is that Harry Truman took over for FDR, of course, during the waning days of World War II. And when he became president, he didn't even know about the Manhattan Project, the project about the atomic bomb. That's how out of the loop vice presidents were kept, most vice presidents. Starting in 1977, when Jimmy Carter assumed office, Walter Mondale was brought in his vice president, brought in more as someone who was informed, someone who was at all the meetings, someone who got the daily briefings, all that kind of stuff, so that in case he had to take over, he was fully formed and up to date. So, but other than that, most vice presidents did not think much of the office. One of them, I can't remember who, right off the top of my head, said that the vice presidency isn't worth a warm pitcher of spit. He used another crass name for a bodily fluid. And Teddy Roosevelt, vice president, when he became president, there was a chandelier somewhere in the White House that was bothering him. And he said, send that over to the vice president's office, maybe it'll keep him awake. Okay, most of these people did not care much for the vice presidency because it was kind of a go nowhere job. There's the old joke about the lady who had 2 sons, one joined the Navy and one became vice president. Neither were ever heard from again. So that's kind of how the vice presidency, up until more recent times, was viewed. So the vice president right now is Kamala Harris, obviously, and she is running for president. The vice presidents don't have a great track record of becoming president. I believe 15 out of the 49 that have served have only become president. Only 15 out of 49. That's not a good percentage. And the vast majority of those, the majority of those were through the death or resignation of a president, which is the list we'll go over right now. First of all, John Tyler became president when William Henry Harrison passed away. Millard Fillmore became president upon the death of Zachary Taylor. Andrew Johnson after the assassination of Abraham Lincoln. Chester Arthur, remember him? I'm sure you did a report back in school on him. Chester Arthur after the assassination of James Garfield. Teddy Roosevelt after the assassination of William McKinley. I see a pattern developing here and I don't like it. Calvin Coolidge after the death of Warren G. Harding. Harry Truman after the death of Franklin Roosevelt. Lyndon Johnson after the assassination of John Kennedy. And finally, most recently, Gerald Ford, who became president after the resignation of Richard Nixon back in 1974, August of 1974. And that's how most vice presidents became president, is through death or resignation of the sitting president. So that's basically what the vice president is given the duties of in the Constitution, and how it's kind of changed from someone who just gets put off into an office and goes to the funerals of all the people, all the leaders of the world who die, and they now become a more integral part of the team, the daily team, the president's team, to make sure that should the unthinkable happen, they are ready to go. Too many things out there that are on fire. You need to know where the fires are to take care of them if you become the man or woman in charge. Thank you so much for joining us. Hope you paid attention, because there will be a test at the next election, which is coming up when? Yeah, you're right, November 5th. November 5th. If you haven't registered to vote, please do so. You need to be registered. Well, in most states anyway. This is Mr. A reminding you that we, the people, are the government. Don't forget to subscribe, click that bell, and like and share this video. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time.